everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. Before we begin, let's recap the thrilling events of our last story. After a desperate cross-country journey, Ty, Caleb, and Ashley finally made it back to Alberta, only to discover that Nathan's men had set up a blockade, cutting Heartland off from the world. In a tense and emotional climax, a deeply suspicious Jack finally learned the truth about Nathan's lies and received a flood of frantic missed calls from Caleb and Ashley just as their phone batteries died. If you missed that incredible high-stakes story, the full playlist is linked for you in the description below. If you're enjoying this new season, please take a second to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Now today, the final desperate battle for Heartland begins as Team Ty makes their last stand. The site of the makeshift blockade, a line of dark, imposing SUVs and even larger, more intimidating men, was a final, brutal confirmation of the new reality. Heartland was no longer a sanctuary. It was a fortress under siege. The three of them, Ty, Caleb, and Ashley, stood in the deep shadows at the edge of the road, their hearts pounding a frantic, unified rhythm of fear and a grim, desperate resolve. The truck driver who had given them a ride, seeing the unofficial but clearly non-negotiable checkpoint, had wished them a quiet, nervous good luck and had wisely turned his big rig around, disappearing back into the night. They were on their own.
So what's the plan now? We can't just walk up and ask them to move.
His voice was a low, tense whisper.
There has to be another way in, an old logging road, a game trail. This can't be the only route.
There isn't.
Ty's voice was a flat, hard line, his eyes, which had been scanning the terrain with a focused, tactical intensity, now fixed on the distant, welcoming lights of the ranch. Tyso? Not for a vehicle, but for us. Maybe. We go on foot. We cut across the north pasture. It's rough terrain. It's dark, but it will take us to the back of the barn. It's our only shot. It was a desperate, high-risk gamble, but it was the only one they had. They didn't waste another second. They slipped from the edge of the road and into the familiar, concealing darkness of the woods, a silent, determined team on a final, impossible mission. The journey was a brutal, adrenaline-fueled ordeal. They moved as fast as they could through the dense, unforgiving terrain of the Alberta foothills at night. They scrambled up steep, rocky inclines. They pushed their way through thick, thorny brush, their clothes and their skin paying the price. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made them freeze, their senses on high alert. They were not just on a rescue mission anymore, they were soldiers infiltrating enemy territory. After what felt like an eternity of a lung-burning, heart-pounding trek, they finally reached the edge of the property. They could see the familiar, beloved silhouette of the Heartland barn, its red paint a dark, almost black shape against the starry sky. They were home, but the home was surrounded. They saw them then. Nathan's men, dozens of them. They were spread out in a loose but organized perimeter around the main house and the barn, their dark figures moving with a quiet, professional efficiency. They were not just ranch hands. They were guards. They were an occupying army. The sheer scale of Nathan's operation, the sheer audacious arrogance of it, was a shocking, terrifying sight. He had not just cut the ranch off from the world. He had invaded it. Ty, Caleb, and Ashley were crouched behind a low stone wall, their minds racing. Their plan to make a quiet, stealthy approach was now useless. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and completely, utterly exposed.
What do we do now? We can't fight all of them.
Ty looked at the house, at the warm, golden light spilling from the windows. He knew Amy was in there, his Amy, and she was about to marry a monster, completely unaware of the private army he had assembled to protect his own dark secret. The time for stealth was over. The time for patience was over. All that was left was a single, desperate, and probably foolish act of faith. Ty, no, we can't fight all of them. But they don't know who I am, and they don't know we're here. We have one advantage, the element of surprise. We have to make a run for it. We have to get to the barn. If we can just get to a phone, get to Jack.
It's suicide, man.
It's our only shot.
He looked at his best friend, at the woman who had just saved their lives, and he saw the same fierce and unwavering resolve in their eyes. They were in this together, to the very end. They didn't wait another second. They took a deep collective breath, and then they ran. They burst from the cover of the woods and sprinted across the open, moonlit field that separated them from the barn. They were a desperate, chaotic, and completely unexpected charge. For a few glorious seconds, it seemed like it might actually work. They were halfway across the field before the first sharp, commanding shout echoed in the night. The reaction of Nathan's men was instantaneous. The loose, relaxed perimeter instantly tightened into a closing net. Men were running from all directions, their dark figures converging on the three lone, desperate runners. A brutal, chaotic, and ultimately hopeless brawl erupted in the middle of the Heartland yard. Ty, Caleb, and Ashley fought with the fierce, desperate courage of cornered animals. Ty was a whirlwind of controlled, efficient violence, his body moving with a lethal grace he didn't know he possessed. Caleb was a powerhouse, his fists a blunt, powerful instrument of pure, righteous fury. And Ashley, to everyone's surprise, was a fierce, scrappy, and surprisingly effective fighter, her movements sharp and vicious. But it was not enough. They were outnumbered, at least 10-1. For every man they took down, 2 more would take his place. They were quickly, inevitably, and brutally overwhelmed. The fight ended with the 3 of them on their knees in the dirt, their arms wrenched behind their backs, the rough, biting grip of Nathan's hired goons holding them in place. They were captured. They had failed. And the last desperate hope of saving Amy and of saving Heartland was gone. They were on their knees in the dirt of the Heartland yard, the rough, calloused hands of Nathan's hired goons holding them in a vice-like grip. The fight was over. They were captured, their last desperate gamble having failed. Ty looked up, his chest heaving, his body a screaming chorus of new aches and pains, and saw the warm, welcoming lights of the main house, so close and yet, now, 1,000,000 miles away. He had failed. He had come all this way, had survived so much, only to be beaten, to be captured, just a few hundred yards from the one place, the one person he was trying to save. A wave of profound and absolute despair washed over him. It was over. Caleb, beside him, was a volcano of impotent rage, still struggling against the unyielding grip of the 2 large men who held him.
You bastards! You have no idea who you're messing with. When Jack Bartlett finds out about this,
His threat was cut short as one of the men roughly twisted his arm behind his back, a sharp, searing pain shooting up his shoulder. He let out a pained grunt, his face contorted in a mixture of anger and agony. The leader of the goons, a tall, thin man with cold, dead eyes and a cruel, thin-lipped smile, stepped forward. He looked down at the 3 of them with a look of bored, professional satisfaction. Jack Bartlett isn't going to find out about anything, and neither is anyone else. You 3 are just going to disappear. Again. He nodded to his men, a silent, final command. The men began to haul them to their feet, their intention clear. They were going to be dragged away, back to a secret prison, back to the darkness, their last desperate hope extinguished for good. It was in this moment of absolute, final hopelessness that the unexpected happened. Ashley Stanton, who had been a silent, seething figure of fury, her face a mask of defiant rage, made her move. She was not a brawler. She was not a cowboy. She was a woman of sophistication and grace, but she was also a fighter, and she was not going to let them take the man she loved without a fight. The goon who was holding Caleb had a tight proprietary grip on his collar, his knuckles white. In a single, swift, and completely unexpected motion, Ashley lunged forward and sank her teeth hard into the man's fleshy hand. The man let out a loud, high-pitched shriek of pure, unadulterated pain and surprise, his grip on Caleb's collar instantly releasing as he reflexively pulled his hand back, staring in shocked, disbelieving horror at the deep, bloody teeth marks on his skin. It was a small, chaotic, and brilliant moment of inspired, feral defiance, and it was the only opening they were going to get.
Run, Caleb!
She screamed, her voice a raw, powerful, and desperate command.
Run!
Caleb didn't hesitate. He was a man of instinct, and in that split second, he saw his one and only chance. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, a desperate, all-out sprint for the main house, for Jack, for help. The other goons, their attention momentarily diverted by their colleagues' pained screams, were a second too slow to react. 2 of them immediately broke off, their faces a mask of cold, professional fury, and began to chase him down, their heavy boots pounding on the soft earth of the yard. The scene devolved into a desperate, chaotic chase across the familiar, moonlit landscape of the Heartland Ranch. Caleb ran with a speed he didn't know he possessed, his lungs on fire, his heart a wild, terrified drum against his ribs. He could hear the heavy, rhythmic pounding of the men's footsteps right behind him, getting closer, closer. He risked a glance over his shoulder. They were almost on him. He knew he couldn't outrun them for long. He had to get to Jack. He had to get to the house. He saw the warm, welcoming light of the barn, and with a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, he changed direction, his boots slipping in the damp grass as he made a hard turn. He was almost there. He could see the figure of a man, of Jack, standing in the wide open doorway of the barn, his silhouette a beacon of hope in the darkness. He was just a few yards away. Just as he was about to make it to the relative safety of the barn, one of the goons, with a final desperate lunge, managed to grab him by the leg, his hand a vice-like grip on his ankle. Caleb went down hard, his face hitting the dirt, the taste of soil and blood filling his mouth. He felt the man's heavy weight on his back, felt the rough biting scrape of a rope being pulled tight around his wrists. But he was not the same man who had been so easily captured just a few minutes before. He was a man who had been given a second chance by the fierce, brave, and utterly insane woman he loved, and he was not going to waste it. With a raw, guttural roar of pure, unadulterated rage and a lifetime of rodeo-honed strength, he bucked. He threw his body backward with all his might, the unexpected violent motion sending the man on his back flying. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder, the blood streaming from a new cut on his forehead, and with a final desperate and all-out lunge, he threw himself the last few feet, collapsing in a bruised, bloody, and triumphant heap at the feet of a stunned and completely bewildered Jack Bartlett. The two goons, seeing their prey now in the protective, formidable presence of the Patriarch of Heartland, skidded to a halt. They looked from the bloody, panting man on the ground to the old man in the doorway, and a moment of professional uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Their orders were to be discreet. A quiet, professional abduction was one thing. A loud, violent, and public brawl with the most respected man in the entire valley was another. They exchanged a quick, silent look, and then, without a word, they turned and retreated back into the darkness. Their mission, for now, a failure. Jack Bartlett stood in the wide-open doorway of his barn, a silent, formidable figure against the warm, golden light spilling out from behind him. He looked down at the bruised, bloody, and desperately panting man who had just collapsed at his feet, and then up at the two large, menacing figures who had been chasing him, who now stood hesitating at the edge of the yard. His face, a weathered roadmap of a long and hard-won life, was a mask of cold, quiet, and absolute authority. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He just stared at the two goons, his eyes in the dim light as hard and as unyielding as the Canadian shield. The silent, powerful message was clear. You are not welcome here, and you will not take one more step onto my land. The two men, clearly not paid enough to start a war with the legendary Patriarch of Heartland, exchanged a quick, frustrated look. They were professional muscle, not soldiers. Their mission had been to quietly and efficiently neutralize a threat. The situation had just escalated far beyond their pay grade. With a final angry and frustrated glare, they turned and retreated back into the darkness, disappearing into the shadows from whence they came. The immediate physical threat was gone, but the real and infinitely more terrifying crisis was just beginning. Jack knelt, his old knees protesting, beside the man on the ground. It was Caleb, the boy he had known for years, the boy who was like a second, more reckless son to him. He was a mess. His lip was split and bleeding. A nasty purple bruise was already beginning to form on his cheekbone, and a deep, angry gash on his forehead was trickling a steady stream of blood down the side of his face. But it was the look in his eyes that terrified Jack the most. It was a look of pure, unadulterated, and frantic terror.
Caleb? What in the hell is going on? Who are those men? Are you all right?
Caleb pushed himself up, his body a single, screaming protest of aches and pains. He grabbed the front of Jack's shirt, his grip surprisingly strong, his eyes wild with a desperate, urgent plea.
Jack, you have to listen to me. You have to help me. Stop Amy's wedding. It's a sham. All of it.
The words came out in a raw, frantic, and breathless torrent. Jack stared at him, his own face a mask of profound, bewildered confusion.
What are you talking about, son? A sham? Amy and Nathan are in love. They're getting married.
No, you don't understand. He's lying. He's been lying to all of you for years. They captured him, Jack. They captured them.
Captured? Who? Caleb, slow down. You're not making any sense.
They captured Ty.
The name, spoken with such a desperate, impossible, and absolute certainty, was a sonic boom in the quiet of the Heartland yard. Jack froze, his entire being going completely and utterly still. He stared at Caleb, at the wild, desperate, and completely serious look in the younger man's eyes, and he felt the solid, predictable world he had been standing on just a moment before begin to fracture, to tilt on its axis. He had heard the stories, the strange, impossible rumors that had been whispered in the town after Ty's memorial, the desperate, hopeful theories of a grieving community that had refused to let go. He had dismissed them all as the sad, nonsensical ramblings of a people in mourning. But Caleb was not a man given to flights of fancy. He was a man of simple, solid, and sometimes brutally honest truths.
Caleb,
His own voice was a low, pained, and deeply warning growl.
you know Ty is gone. We were there. We all were.
No, that's the lie. He's alive, Jack. I've seen him. I've talked to him. He's been here in Hudson for weeks, hiding. He was captured years ago by Nathan Price. He was the one who made him disappear. It was a conspiracy, a plan to get the ranch, to get Amy. And we were on our way to tell you, to warn you, and they grabbed us, Nathan's men, and they have Ashley too.
The whole insane, unbelievable, and terrifying story came pouring out of him, a chaotic, desperate, and yet utterly convincing confession. Jack listened, his face a mask of stone, but inside, his own mind was a raging, chaotic storm. It was impossible. It was the ravings of a man who had clearly taken a bad blow to the head. It was a fantasy. But as he looked into Caleb's eyes, as he saw the profound, unwavering, and absolute truth that was shining there, a new and even more terrifying possibility began to take root in his own heart. What if it wasn't a fantasy? What if it was real? His own quiet, nagging suspicions about Nathan from the past few months, the small, discordant notes of his behavior, the cold, hard look he had sometimes seen in the man's eyes when he thought no one was watching. It all came rushing back, the pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known he was solving, now slamming together with a horrible, clarifying force. He was a man who trusted his gut. And his gut in that moment was telling him that the impossible, unbelievable, and completely insane story that Caleb was telling him was the absolute and terrifying truth. The full monstrous weight of the revelation, of the sheer diabolical evil of Nathan's long, patient deception, hit him with the force of a physical blow. A wave of pure, cold, and righteous fury, a fury he had not felt in many, many years, rose in his chest, a powerful, protective, and grandfatherly rage. The love he felt for his family was a fierce and deeply formidable thing, and the thought of a man he had trusted, a man he had welcomed into his home, a man who was, at this very moment, about to marry his granddaughter, trying to harm them, to destroy their legacy, it was an unforgivable sin. The war for Heartland had just finally and truly begun. While the terrible, unbelievable truth was exploding in the Heartland barn, a very different and beautifully deceptive reality was unfolding a few miles away. The location for the wedding was a masterpiece of romantic perfection, a place that Nathan had chosen with a villain's brilliant, strategic eye. It was a secluded, private clearing deep in the foothills, a place of breathtaking, natural beauty, with a panoramic view of the majestic, snow-capped Rocky Mountains. It was a place that was so quintessentially Heartland that no one would ever suspect it was the stage for the final act of the ranch's destruction. The scene was a picture of idyllic, rustic elegance. A small, intimate gathering of the family's closest friends and relatives were seated on simple, white wooden chairs. A string quartet, hired from Calgary, was playing a soft, beautiful melody, their music a gentle, hopeful counterpoint to the quiet, nervous anticipation of the guests. At the front of the clearing, under a simple, beautiful archway of woven willow branches and white roses, stood a radiant and slightly anxious Amy Fleming. She was a vision in a simple, elegant, off-white gown, her blonde hair woven with small, delicate wildflowers. She looked out at the small, smiling crowd, at the faces of the people she loved most in the world, and her heart was a chaotic symphony of emotions. She was happy, she was, but a small, nagging, and persistent feeling of unease was a discordant note in her otherwise perfect day. Jack was missing. He was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be the one to walk her down the aisle, to give her away, his steady, comforting presence the anchor to her own nervous excitement, but he wasn't here. And his absence felt like a profound and deeply unsettling hole in the fabric of the day. Beside her, Nathan was a picture of calm, handsome, and loving devotion. He stood tall and proud in his perfectly tailored suit, a warm, reassuring smile on his face. But underneath the charming facade, a cold, nervous, and rapidly escalating panic was beginning to set in. Jack's absence was not just a breach of tradition, it was a complication, a variable he had not accounted for, and Nathan Price did not like complications. His mind was a frantic, high-speed calculation of risk assessment. Where was the old man? Had he just been delayed, or did he know something? The thought sent a jolt of pure, cold adrenaline through him. He looked out at the single winding road that led to this secluded clearing, and a new, terrible, and all too plausible scenario began to play out in his mind. The ghost. The one loose thread in his otherwise perfect plan. What if he had made it back? What if he had gotten to Jack? The possibility was so terrifying, so potentially catastrophic that it forced his hand. He could not wait. He could not risk it. He had to finish this. He had to secure his prize. Now, he leaned over to Amy, his voice a low, loving, and completely deceptive murmur.
I'm sure he's just running late, sweetheart. You know how your grandfather is. He probably got sidetracked by a sick horse on the way here.
He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze.
But we can't keep our guests waiting forever. And our officiant has another appointment this evening. I think we should just start. He'll be here any minute, I promise.
The suggestion was so completely out of character for the usually respectful, tradition-minded man that it took Amy and the rest of the family by complete surprise.
Start? Without Grandpa Jack? Nathan, we can't. He has to be here. He's the one who's walking Amy down the aisle.
I know, and he will be. But we can begin the procession. He'll be here by the time we get to the vows. I'm sure of it.
His charm, his confidence, his gentle, loving insistence, it was a powerful, persuasive force. The family, though deeply unsettled, reluctantly agreed. Back at the ranch, a very different and much more desperate kind of plan was being executed. The moment Jack had absorbed the full, monstrous truth of Caleb's story, he had become a man of pure, cold, and absolute action. He had tried his phone, a frantic, desperate attempt to call the wedding venue, to call Lou, to warn them. But as Caleb had feared, the line was dead. A strange electronic silence. The signal jammer. Nathan had thought of everything. There was no time for a truck. The roads would be too slow, and he knew, with a certainty that settled in his bones, that Nathan would have men watching them. He had only one option, the old way, the fast way, the Heartland way. He ran to the barn, his movements belying his age, and threw a saddle on the back of the fastest, most powerful horse in his stable, a young, fiery quarter-horse gelding. Caleb, his own face a mask of grim, determined resolve, was right beside him.
I'm coming with you.
No. You're hurt. And I need you here. If I don't make it in time, you're the only one who knows the whole story. You stay here. You protect this place. You protect Lindy. That's an order.
He swung himself up into the saddle with a grace and an ease that he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer just a gentle, aging patriarch. He was Jack Bartlett, a man with a legacy to protect, a family to defend, and a lifetime of righteous fury in his heart. He looked down at Caleb, his own eyes burning with a cold, hard fire.
You tell me where they are, son, and I will handle the rest.
Caleb gave him the location, a place Jack knew well, a place of profound, natural beauty that was about to become a battlefield. Jack nodded once, a sharp, definitive gesture, and then, with a loud, powerful cry, he spurred the horse into a full, desperate gallop, a lone, legendary, and incredibly determined cowboy on the most important ride of his life. The scene is a masterpiece of agonizing, slow-motion suspense, a perfect, beautiful wedding ceremony on a collision course with a terrible, galloping truth. The story crosscuts between two starkly different realities, the tension building with every passing second. At the beautiful, sun-drenched clearing in the foothills, the wedding procession has begun. A nervous but radiant Amy, her heart aflutter with a mixture of profound happiness and a small nagging worry about her grandfather's absence, is being walked down the aisle by a proud and slightly tearful Tim. The string quartet is playing a beautiful, soaring melody, and the small, intimate crowd of friends and family is a sea of smiling, happy faces. Amy reaches the front of the aisle, and Nathan takes her hand, his own smile a perfect, brilliant mask of loving devotion. He looks into her eyes, and all she can see is a future, a peaceful, stable, and happy future. The officiant, a kind, local woman with a warm, gentle voice, begins the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today, in this beautiful place, to witness and to celebrate the joining of two lives, two hearts. Her words are a gentle, poetic murmur, a traditional, comforting script for a new beginning. The scene cuts, hard and fast, to a very different kind of journey. Jack Bartlett is a man possessed, a force of nature on horseback. He is pushing his horse and himself to the absolute limits of their endurance, a 70-year-old man riding with the fierce, reckless abandon of a boy. He is thundering across the vast, open expanse of the Alberta foothills, a lone, legendary cowboy on the most important ride of his life. The wind whips at his face, his hat is pulled low, and his expression is a mask of grim, righteous, and unwavering resolve. He is a man on a mission to stop a wedding, to save his family, to right a terrible, unimaginable wrong. Back at the clearing, the ceremony continues, the mood one of serene, romantic perfection. A love that is a testament to the resilience of the human heart, a love that has found a new spring after a long and difficult winter. Amy and Nathan are holding hands, their gazes locked. Nathan's eyes are full of a triumphant, possessive adoration. Amy's are full of a quiet, trusting, and completely oblivious hope. Cut back to Jack. He is pushing his horse harder, faster, his own breathing a ragged, painful gasp that is a match for the animals. He is getting closer. He can hear the faint, distant sound of the string quartet's music, a beautiful, haunting melody on the wind. It is a sound that tells him he is almost there, and that he is almost out of time. Back at the clearing, the officiant has reached the final, most crucial part of the ceremony. She smiles at the happy couple, her own voice full of a genuine, heartfelt warmth. And so, if there is anyone here today who has a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. The traditional formal question hangs in the quiet, sun-drenched air. The guests smile. It is a rhetorical question, a quaint, old-fashioned piece of a beautiful, perfect ceremony. A long, peaceful silence follows. The officiant smiles at Amy. Then by the power vested in me, she is about to pronounce them husband and wife. She is about to seal the deal, to complete the final, irreversible act of Nathan's long, sinister plan. But before she can say the words, a new sound, a sound that is not a part of the perfect orchestrated ceremony, intrudes. It is the sound of thundering hooves, of a horse being pushed to its absolute limits, getting closer, closer. And then a voice, a familiar, powerful, and absolutely unmistakable voice, a voice that is a roar of pure, desperate, and righteous fury, a voice that is the very heart and soul of Heartland itself.
Stop!
The episode ends on a massive, shocking, and absolutely brilliant cliffhanger. Jack has burst through the trees at the edge of the clearing on horseback, a wild, legendary, and avenging figure. He has arrived in the nick of time. The entire wedding party, Amy and Nathan included, turn to stare at him, their faces a mask of pure, stunned, and utter disbelief. The perfect, beautiful ceremony is shattered. The truth has arrived,